Indigenization Appreciation Hour. And today, of course, we have another guest joining us. With me is, of course, we have Sriram Tyagarajan, who's my associate. And we also have today Indonil Roy, who's a long-time friend of DDR, let's put it that way. He's, of course, he specializes in things like AI, etc. But he's also an aerospace commentator and an expert in some by his own right as well, I guess. So today's episode is going to focus on obviously Indian aerospace projects, given that this is an Aero India 2025 special, the first of a few, I think. So without further ado, let us get to it as we always do. So let us talk about a program that has been resurrected, so to speak, right? It's a resurrected program. It's like a phoenix. It's like a veritable phoenix that has risen from the ashes. And one is, of course, talking about the intermediate jet trainer program, which is entirely a HAL project meant for the Indian Air Force, but was designed, developed, and will be built by HAL. And this project led to what is called the HJT-36 Sitara, right? The intermediate jet trainer is called the HJT-36 Sitara. So, Shyam, could you just, yeah, put up a picture for us? And in the current and in Aero India 2025, it is going to be put on both flying and static display. And yeah, the one at the bottom of the screen, the one at the bottom of the screen is now is what it looks like, is what one of the flying examples looks like at Aero India 25. And it's been rechristened the Sitara Neo, HJT-36 Sitara Neo, as in, Neo is of course new. More that sort of tallies with this whole theme of resurrection. And why resurrection? Well, some of you who've followed this program before would know that while the first flight happened way back in 2003, this program, this jet has still not been inducted into the Air Force. In fact, far from it. It's actually gone into a, as of today, it is in a second seeing a second wave of limited series production, because as you know, the program has had more than its fair share of challenges. The challenges, of course, related to design issues. In particular, they related to the fact that the early Sitara prototypes were not really capable of, stall and subsequent spin recovery, which is obviously a mandatory requirement for an intermediate jet trainer of this sort. And while the design itself could be called stallable, capable of stall, it was not really capable of stall recovery, and even the onset of stall was not really well defined. I mean, you did not know when the onset of stall would happen. So it went through a whole process of, iterative design changes, which of course Indonil will talk about, since he's the expert on the evolution of the project itself in some ways. So I'll leave that to him. Of course, it went through a whole bunch of iterations. Nothing could be, but the desired characteristics could not be achieved in terms of spin recovery, etc. And then finally, a major redesign was undertaken in house, of course, and there is rather a dedicated team of persevering souls at HAL who never gave up on their baby. And apparently the problems have got fixed now, which again Indonil will take us through, and he'll have his own view on that. And how they were fixed is something that he will, of course, elaborate upon. And as things stand right now, money has been released, money that was already in sort of on HAL's books for this program, to the tune of close to 266 crores, has been released for building a new set of limited series production units. Because the Shriram, would you put that up, please? This is something from the HAL annual report for 22-23, which makes interesting reading and is something that our viewers should know about. It is basically the fact that a certain amount of money has already been paid to HAL for this project, and HAL is being told to create new LSPs. basically new, well, rebuilt LSPs, because there was a clause that they could not, no delivery of aircraft could happen with legacy LRUs or legacy parts and components. And a lot has changed in 20 years, as you can imagine. So they are basically going to deliver rebuilt aircraft with the modifications that Indonil will take you through, and they are again going to execute an LSP order of 12 units first. Subsequent to this, a much longer, much larger order of 70 plus units, 72 units to be exact, will be placed on HAL Kanpur, which is usually known as the Transport Aircraft Division. The LSPs themselves are being integrated as the IJ at what is called the IJT division, right? So as you can see, stores, according to the contract, IJT contract, stores to be supplied under this contract shall be new, that is not manufactured before, and shall incorporate all the latest improvements and modifications thereto. Therefore, parts manufactured and lying in inventory could not be used for delivery of the ultimate product. This is what HAL has written in its annual report to the customers at this stage. This is back in 22-23, financial year 22-23. So this is where things are. Certification has not yet been officially, bestowed upon the IJT by Semilac. Probably that is a bit of a sore point between HAL and Semilac, but that is for HAL and Semilac to thrash out. But be rest assured, Semilac. I'll just make another point here before I sort of bring Indonil in. Semilac, despite whatever some voices on the internet and media might be saying, has a very thorough certification process. So it can't be both ways, right? When there are problems with the HAL Dhruv, a bunch of people go around claiming, oh, but it was certified by Semilac, as if to suggest that Semilac, just certified it for the sake of it. There is no such thing. Whereas in the case of the IJT, the people are crying about why Semilac is taking so long to certify the design. So it should not, it should, things should not be sort of approached from both ends, as is when is the need arises to make some rhetorical point. Okay, with that out of the way, let me bring Indronil in, and he can take us through the evolution of the Sitara design, how the problems with the design were licked, what he thinks about the project today, what are the key learnings, and of course, what is the status of the project as per his information as well. That is something he can also expound upon. Right, so Indronil, welcome to have you here, and do take us through the evolution of the design itself.
Thank you for this chance to talk about an Indian aircraft. This is rare, and so we must cherish these aircrafts and the people who build this. IJT started around 2000, and the turn from drawing board sanction to the first rollout was very quick, within 3 years. And HAL at that point had been designing some trainers, but they decided to change it slightly and say that with this IJT, I'm going to put two pilots in tandem, and the second pilot, the instructor, is going to be seated quite high. This gives a very panoramic view to the instructor. This is amazing. It's best in class. It's 8 degrees, which is no IJT in the world has that level. The problem that happens with that is that the aircraft becomes taller at the front, which is detrimental to the control, to the lateral control. You see, as an Aero flies, you want the fins to be at the back, but if you make the Aero very fat at the front, it's difficult. Same with aircrafts. Um, so 2011, 2006, 7, they entered this spin testing. Spin testing is nothing but an aircraft flies level like this. You start increasing what's called its angle of attack, and at some point of time, it's going what's called depart, means the airflow stops following the top of the wing. It goes straight. It's basically a rock at that point. What happens then is that the nose will fall, and as it falls and the aircraft is going down, if you give any kind of lateral movement, any yaw movement, it'll start spinning. So not only is it falling, you spin. And then the recovery is that it's very disorientating for a pilot who's inside this, as the plane is going towards the ground, and it's spinning at a high rate. And some aircrafts can emerge from this. IJT had a problem in emerging from this. In fact, it was very, very oscillatory, and it would depart. Um, the way to come out of this is actually to point the nose even further down, which is quite counterintuitive. But if you point the nose down, actually the angle of attack decreases, and then you can climb out. So this is the recovery mechanism. IJT couldn't do this. And what was happening is that as it was increasing its nose angle, uh, it would depart, and it would depart in a unpredictably. Sometime it would depart like this, sometime it will depart like this. The wing will drop at a higher rate or smaller rate. And if you guys saw the video from AI, the last AI, HBT took it up. He joined HAL in 2016. He took it up, and you can hear the guttural cry of a man saying no, 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 which is like just before an accident is about to happen. He can he has lost control of the aircraft because the aircraft is not behaving. He put the nose down. You can hear everybody telling him put the stick down as far as possible. He's trying. He goes. It's oscillating, and while oscillating, it departs like this, and then it's oscillating upside down and spinning, and nothing that he can do recovers. Luckily, he was flying with a spin chute, and the spin chute pulls out from the back of the aircraft, pulling the nose down.
Just to
That
interrupt you for a second, for our viewers who joined, who came late, HBT is a reference to Harshvardhan Thakur, right? He
Group
is
captain retired. Yeah.
group captain Harshvardhan Thakur, retired of course, but he is the chief test pilot at HAL, right? So
Yes.
just for that, sorry to butt in, Indranil.
No.
Please resume.
No.
Right.
Yeah. So this is the state of the aircraft in 2016. By the way, in 2014, BAE was roped in as a consultant, and what BAE was saying is that, hey, your aircraft is rolling at when you're about to departure. Give it more inertia. So by giving it more inertia, you put weights at the end of the wingtips. And anybody who has studied class 11 physics knows that that will increase your reluctance to roll. They had put 150 kgs on both sides of the wings. That compromised, that not did not solve the problem, and compromised the performance of the aircraft in every other space. It was not acceptable as an IJT at that point of time. Okay. Uh, so in 2016, they found out through wind tunnel testing in Germany that another point, we don't have spin tunnels in India, and we are trying to build all kinds of aircrafts.
It must be France, Indranil, Onera in France, right?
No,
For
it was
spin
in
testing.
no,
Okay.
it was in Germany. So
Okay.
what they found was that if you push the tail back
Yeah.
by 1 meter, and then the radar was actually quite high. They said increase it all the way to the tailpipe. And Sriram, if you put the picture that you had with the two IJTs, I can
Sure.
explain
Yeah.
that one. If you do that, then you could get some the controls back. The and they did so, but the problem is that this would require a lot of strengthening of the empennage, which is the back part of the fuselage, right? That changes happened in between 20 somewhere between 2016 to 2019. The first flight happened in 2019 under the Chaki sir and Awasthi sir. They are also test pilots, very senior test pilots at HAL. Um, HVT was actually not well at that time. Um, uh, but it was still not ideal. The radar, the throw was plus minus 30 degrees. That's huge. Same with the elevator. The throw was plus minus 30 degrees. That makes it very violent, and all the recovery and all that. They have iteratively gone in again and again and again and made many changes. They have tried all kinds of surfaces to give it. one surface that if you see very carefully in this black one, there is a nose strake right in the front, right behind the pitot tube, and that thank you. That nose strake is found in fighter aircrafts. You will find it in MiG-29 and others, Gripen and all. It increases stability. It makes the airflow follow the contours of the aircraft around the nose. Another thing which is not visible in this is actually the front edge was straight. You see this wing fences over there? Um, uh, from the outer lip, from the wingtip inwards, they extended the extension and made it more curved. It's uh, not to go too much into detail, but they extended it slightly. That improves the performance of the aircraft. It stops the wingtips from stalling that early. It makes it predictable, and it is the outside is slightly ahead of the inside. That makes a tooth for the so as the air comes from the front of the wing, it reaches that tooth and then follows back over the wing, which is what is preferred. Um, the final thing is the you see this finlets coming out of the horizontal stabilizer. That makes the it's just like an arrow. If you put make the tail better, it is more stable. Um, Now with all of this, the spins they can do spins. It's still oscillating, but much less. They remember I told you it was plus minus 30 degrees. Now it is for the elevator it's around 18 degrees. For the rudder it's just 12 degrees. Um, Remember I told you that BAE had asked them to put 150 kgs each on each wingtip. That's gone. And uh, uh, the finlets give it amazing stability. Uh, the aircraft is very smooth to fly now. It will never departure like what happened in 2011 and in 2016 will never happen again. The recovery is very predictable. The onset is predictable. So the onset is predictable. What happens? It still oscillates as it flat spins, but it's manageable, and then they can recover predictably. It can even do inverted spins, flat spins, and in that inverted flat spins, they can get out with just 12% elevator uh, uh,
Control.
deflections. So
Yeah.
those are phenomenal. There are lots of other changes that are happening on the engine. The engine is now slightly more powerful. So it's going to produce between 16 kilonewtons to 17.6 kilonewtons uh, of thrust. Um, and with this increased thrust and reduced weight, 300 kgs less, they can meet every requirement that was set for them. As Sriram said, they have an order from the IF to produce this limited series production. In 2 years, they're working with UEC, which is the engine corporation from Russia, to increase the thrust to 20 kilonewtons. And the cost of this aircraft is going to be about 100 crores. The performance of this aircraft is close to the Hawk, which goes about 220 crores. So this is great value for money. And for me, a researcher, a product developer, for me, these people who know how to fix an aircraft are the priceless things that you cannot put a price on people who can build next generation technology. Um, oh, one last thing, the avionics is upgraded. You will see more pictures here. There are going to be two dual screens, each 6 by 8 inches.
Okay.
So that
Bigger
puts
than the LCA.
yeah. So that is 96 square inch per pilot, um, which is greater than LCA, MK1, MK2. Um, by the way, that's the largest amount of screen that any pilot in the Indian Air Force will have in any of its current aircrafts. So all in all, this is great news. They are going to extend this to AGT as well. And I am very excited. I'm very happy for people who persevered, struggled, failed, iterated, fixed it. That's how you build things. You forget the people who talk. Talk is cheap.
Okay. So, Indranil, thank you for that extremely detailed exposition of how the IJT's design issues were fixed. It was challenging to say the least. And of course, it's good to hear that the system itself is going to cost a fraction of what the AJT costs, even when built in India. Of course, there's always the license fees there, but it's going to cost a fraction of that for almost for performance that is almost at par, and of course with modernized systems, a much more modern cockpit, etc., etc. So anyway, with that in mind, given that HAL has managed to lick this problem, now that takes us to the next HAL trainer project that we are going to talk about today. That is, of course, the HLFT 42, which has a bit of the old HF-24 Marut's design lineage in it. So before we turn to Indranil again for his views on that, let's go to Shriram. Shriram, give us an update on the project and also tell us about what is the sense you got at Aero India seminar today, which you attended, right? Which you were at earlier today. So take us through both of those things.
Okay. Let's touch on the IJT itself quickly. Indranil spoke about the genesis of the program and the issues later in the mid 2010s, right? So there was a significant gap in between when the program was written off. There was no user enthusiasm for the project anymore. And because of that, in our system, how things work is that people lose interest, funding gets cut, people get moved out of the program, and it dies a slow, ignominious death. It needs somebody with a little bit of vision, some amount of guts and the will to do it, to come back and say we'll put in effort and then resurrect it. Right now, the Air Force themselves had resigned to the fact that they would have to use two trainers instead of their three-step program. Right, a basic trainer like the HTD-40 and IJT, and then the AJT, the Hawk. But they were sold on the idea that the PC-7 and the HTD-40 would be good enough, and then trainee pilots could jump directly to the BAE Hawk. So not just the IJT program itself, but even the engine, right? That was also put on the back burner, and there was a significant delay. So when people talk about program management and why we don't get things done on time, quickly, within budget, and why Indians are always slow and not worth spending money, might as well just import, right? So this is what happens. Ask any aircraft developer. They've lost lives, spilled blood, tears, sweat, and a whole lot of money to get to where they are today, where they can pick up maybe one or two aircraft programs and get it done, right? Without a loss of life. And sorry, one sec. Yeah, okay. Without loss of life, without too much budget overruns, but that is a universal concern. So all of these happen because they've persevered over decades, right? And what has happened is, even with the engine, it was also put on the back burner because there was no platform to put it into, right? So now we're finally hearing that the HTFE core is more or less sorted out.
HTFE 25.
And a full-fledged, HTFE 25, the 25 kilonewton engine It is finally, been sorted out, and a full-fledged engine is on a test bench right now. And hopefully we'll see it perform better and actually get into an engine. But the IGT for now will fly with the Russian engine. I'm sure we'll have a license production deal with the Russians.
No, that
At
is
least
part
for
of
the
the
initial
project.
bits.
That is part of the project
yeah.
anyway. Yeah, that's part
Anyway,
of the project.
as for the Aero India seminar today, it was, the hosts were Semilac, and the focus is supposed to be on design validation. As I'm sure Indranil and everybody who's working on products at any point in time in your career would know. One sec. Yeah, sorry. Making sure that your design is right is half your problem solved. If you wait until you have your first prototype to figure out major design issues, then you're well and truly, you can fill in the blanks. Right. So that was supposed to be the focus. Anyway, some of the things that we learned were we have confirmation that the MiG-29K for the Navy will have a version of the Uttam radar. At least that's proposed. Even the TEDBF will have a naval radar. So I'm sure there is enough learnings from one to the other that will get ported over. Most of it was already well known. The RTA program, Regional Transport Aircraft, proposal has been sent, and there is hope that it will get sanctioned. It is a 90-seater aircraft. So, and the engine for that aircraft will probably be a variant developed from the AMCA's engine. So we're looking at least 10-15 years into the future. But anyway, the aircraft itself is only under proposal right now. There's no sanction. There's no understanding that, or even appreciation for the need for such an aircraft. So I'm sure the aircraft can be designed around an engine that will be developed in the future. Pretty much that's it, actually. Most of the stuff today was stuff that we know already. The Saras again has been proposed. They have lined up HAL for production. Unit cost wise, again, they've sort of estimated it, but it will need a lot of work with DGCA as well as Semilac, because the thing is, it will be used both in the civilian as well as the military domains, and the certification process for each is not entirely the same. So if you want to keep costs to a minimum, there needs to be some understanding between both of these certifying agencies, Semilac on the military side and DGCA on the civilian side. They both have to come to an understanding to certify the aircraft, not just this one, but any other future aircraft that we might develop. As to doing it in a quickest possible time and at the least possible cost, because we're not a rich country, right? We've ranted about funding and availability for far too long. So if you don't have enough money to throw at a problem, then you have to work slightly intelligently and with a bit more effort from every single agency without getting into turf wars. That was the main thing that we got from the seminar today.
Where is the fun in that, Sriram? No turf wars. There's no fun there at all.
Yeah, unfortunately, they work in different domains. They answer to different ministries. We've ranted about agencies that work under the same ministry. So you can imagine how it is going to be working with civil aviation ministry.
let me jump in here. There is an example they
Please.
can follow, and that example is of course from the United States, where the EAA and FAA work very closely with each other now because they have the various agreements in place, right? So Semilac would be the EAA equivalent for us, and of course DGCA, FAA. So that is how that is the template they might sort of follow to iron out turf issues, etc., etc. Although it's easier said than done, especially in the Indian system. But maybe, who knows? Maybe we'll wake up from the wrong side of the bed one morning. And now, as far as the other thing is concerned, that you mentioned about the Uttam radar being put in the derivative thereof being finding its way to the MiG 29K. It's actually high past noon that was done, because this thing was discussed way back in 2015 itself, right? That this
Yeah.
is this is this ought to be done. In fact, the then DG Aero Tamil Mani had mentioned this to me way back then, over 10 years ago. So that, in any case, I see that happening, because see, the Vikramaditya is going to serve till at least 2036, at least. Whatever they might say, they may even stretch it for a few more years. So the MiG 29K is not going anywhere till 2040 or so, and the midlife upgrade is definitely due for that platform. So that's going to happen. Ajay, coming
It's
back to
the carrier is
yeah.
spending half its life in Kochi.
Yeah, I mean, the Navy could make some money on the side by making it a casino, right? When it's in dry dock, so that sort of
Yeah.
thing. But anyway, so but yeah, jokes aside, Cochin Shipyard Limited has actually done a very good job on the Vikramaditya, and many things have been fixed, especially the old problems with its boilers, right? So all those things have been remedied over time. In fact, the Russians should thank us for fixing their legacy problems on so many systems. Now, as far as this, you mentioned this thing about the turboprop is concerned. You're quite right. You see, there is a 4,000 to 5,000 HP turboprop, which will be a spin-off from the fifth generation engine effort. Right, the fifth generation engine will not just yield turbo shafts as well, but a turboprop also, which will be in the 4,000 to 5,000 horsepower range. And that is, of course, would be two of those should be adequate for the RTA 90, whatever that is. Let us see when that proposal gets cleared, as you said. Right now, it's simply a design on paper. So, okay,
Yeah.
now circling back to the issue of
Coup-
trainers, because
Couple
I'll
of
bring.
more items
Yeah,
to
go
add.
ahead, go ahead, go ahead.
I'll do that and then
Yeah,
we can take a
no,
look.
go ahead.
So off late, among all of these design agencies, um, especially after what we've seen in the Russian-Ukraine conflict, is about pushing for greater autonomy, having loyal wingman programs. A lot of these smaller size drones flying in front of your formation, manned unmanned teaming, increasing amounts of autonomy within the manned aircraft itself, so that the pilot in question can handle not just flying his own aircraft and performing pilot functions for flying the aircraft, he also has to act like a higher level armed forces personnel, managing his entire swarm, or let's say group of drones that he's flying with, in a manned unmanned teaming context. This is in the future, but it is very visible, right? So everybody is working towards that. So among these, um, there are obviously a lot of technologies. We've touched upon all of these in the previous couple of IH episodes, but just to reiterate, one of them is obviously data sharing between drones, between the mothership and the drone, and the whole group, and whoever is sitting back at control, and between similar groups flying together on the same mission or parallel missions. So you can imagine how much data sharing is required, how much autonomy is required at each node in the swarm, so that the person in the loop doesn't have to do more, right? The individual node in the swarm can do a lot of tasks on its own once it has been assigned a task, right? So a lot of this was obviously touched upon. Nobody's going to tell us how they're doing it, but these are areas of focus, and they are working on it. obviously the realization is there that this is the future and this is what is going to happen. And if you remember, even the AMCA will have an unmanned option in a later version. I think we've touched upon this way back, right, in the 2019 interview that we did. Uh, what was the other one? Sorry. Yeah, the 360-degree vision, right? If you remember, the project director for LCA Mark II in his chat with us during the previous Aero India said it would have apertures on the top and bottom, so that they would have 360-degree view, kind of like a distributed aperture system, right? So the Mark II will have that, and obviously the AMCA will obviously have it, and the EOTS system, just like the F-35 has it under the chin, right? Even that is under development right now, so we should see it. We've already seen it on the flying test bed, the small business jet that they have, right? We should see that also being probably fixed on the AMCA prototype, given how delayed it has already been. We should maybe see it on the first AMCA prototype also. So yeah, all the wish list items should be on it.
Okay.
But there is also a great appreciation for the need for shared aperture systems. For instance, see, you have the radar antenna, right? So that traditionally has been used only for radar purposes, right? To beam out signals, get return, get processed, and you figure out who's flying where. So the shared aperture idea is to use that antenna aperture for not just radar ranging and whatever the radar traditionally does, but also for EW and for data sharing. So future aircraft should emit less, should have low probability of intercept emissions of any kind. So, and you have limited places on the airframe itself to put all sorts of apertures for any sort of electronic emissions. So shared aperture then becomes a necessity for space volume requirements, as well as power budget wise, right? You don't really have the power available on board to keep emitting in all directions through all apertures, right? So that is another area of focus.
Okay.
Yeah,
Before
not
before
much
I
else.
let Indranil jump right into this, let me just say a few things. So the distributed aperture system, for those who came late again, will be under the nose, hanging like you have the one of the main sensor
That will
housing,
be under
like
the belly and one on the spine.
no, yeah, like the EOTS on the F-35. The synthetic vision system is what, of course, Sriram was talking about earlier, which is where you have this 3D sort of picture, 3D situational awareness picture, which is projected right onto the helmet vision of the pilot itself, which is being developed for the AMCA. That is one of the core technologies being developed for the AMCA, along with automatic takeoff and landing, which I think we are going to see. We might even see that on the AMCA Mark 1 itself, not just on the Mark 2, because although optionally manned is considered a so-called sixth generation technology, but then that's a very loose way of putting things. But you may see it on the AMCA Mark 1 itself. So that could happen. And of course, as he mentioned, this whole thing, it has to operate in a networked environment with man-unmanned teaming, which is much easier said than done because of all the things he outlined. And this is where I'm going to bring Indranil in first before we'll circle back to talk about a few other things. So tell me something, Indranil. There's a lot of talk about man-unmanned teaming. There are these nice, sort of these nice emblematic posters which are also put up showing this sort of unmanned wingman or and sort of attritable aircraft flying in front, etc., etc. But don't you think, given the computing requirements, given the edge computing requirements of what you want to do, which is set up an ad hoc network in the air and also move, data around with low probability of intercept, right? these things may actually end up encumbering the manned fighter ultimately more than really provide serving as a force multiplier. The reason why I ask this question is, isn't it probably likelier that at some point we may see the number of off-board sensors go down, and the manned platform itself, subject to of course the availability of better engines, being made more capable? What are your thoughts on this?
Yeah, so this actually in the US, the research and implementation of these are slightly ahead of the rest of the world, and thankfully I have some visibility to those. Um, uh, so let me talk on this. First of all, Sriram talked of all these kind of sensors which are getting consolidated, basically, be it the radar or somewhere else. Um, that is an engineering challenge, and as technology nodes move forward, most front runners will get there. US, India, China, they will all get there within the next 5. That's not the true challenge. The true challenge is the man in the cockpit, optionally manned or manned, whatever. The problem is, which Sriram touched momentarily, is that if I am the pilot and I am working with 4 unmanned aircrafts, even if my aircraft can fly itself fully, I cannot do the work of 4 pilots. It's impossible, right? So how do I filter out? Let's say I have solved the network problem. I have solved everything. How do I make decisions for 4 aircrafts? The level of autonomy that is required over there is is huge. Right now, all unmanned aircrafts are controlled from the ground station. Almost the ratio of pilots has not gone down. It's just that a pilot is not on the cockpit. Now, if you put a person in a cockpit, in an uncomfortable cockpit where he cannot move around much, cannot get a drink, etc., etc., and then you overwhelm him with not one, but 4 or 5 unmanned things, it's impossible for them. So then the question comes, the most used and abused word of our decade, AI. That AI will solve your problems. Uh, that's nonsense. So the way AI works is that you know how to solve a problem. You know what is success, what is failure. You have the data for success and failure, and therefore you can train a system which always makes successful decisions. So this is a chicken and egg problem, right? So you don't know how to succeed, and you are saying AI will succeed. So that doesn't work. Um, you hit on the right point. Actually, AI world has 2 parts of it. One is called the training. One is called the inference. So inference can be done on the edge. Today, no system can do training on the edge. I am trying to build one, so I'll leave it at that. But it takes fundamentally different AI. None of today's AI can train on the edge. Uh, so it's computationally impossible at this moment, and from the model's point of view, very improbable. So uh, I'll leave it at that. So even if you solve the AI problems of how to get all the information in, you will most definitely overwhelm the pilot. And so there is this understanding is there in the US. This understanding is there in people who are building such systems. For example, New Space. They have gone ahead to a certain extent. I don't fully understand it. Of course, it's behind curtains, and I have a few questions. But at least in the US, the question is not so much about getting the data in, but how can you reduce the overload on the pilot? Right now, it seems very difficult. This is, I can tell you, in the US, they're spending billions uh, to solve this problem. This is the problem. The rest are all engineering issues.
So the answer will be paradoxically the addition of another pilot, and if possible, another. Okay, so the thing that is going to happen
The
in the era
question
of
is,
AI,
one
no,
sec.
just
The
just one
question
second.
is about compute capability on your autonomous platforms. You want them to be low cost, low footprint, right? Attritable, all of these things. But you want them to have tremendous intelligence. And anybody who's got a new graphics card knows how power demanding they are. So you want contradictory outcomes from something that you are willing to trash, right?
Actually,
So
as a
you
military,
wanted low cost, but you're pushing up the cost due to the automation that you demand out of it.
as a
So
military
that's a
system,
automation.
there is a conundrum. As a military system, you want FX, right? That is what you want. Now the thing is that what has happened because of the IT revolution, etc., and then the, as he said, much abused and honored word called AI. What has happened is they're approaching the problem from the software side, from the side of computing, from the side of training something on the edge, which has not been done, as he has pointed out, from the side of basically doing things on the fly using a computer and
A
statistics and
trustable, a
yeah,
trustable
yeah,
computer.
a trustable computer naturally, and with which also has semiconductors which are from a trusted foundry, which is a corollary to the trustable computer part. But the problem can be solved from other branches of engineering. And the chief thing when you talk about anything which flies against the Earth's gravity, okay, is propulsion. That is really where America is ahead of everybody else, and that is what they are going to really leverage to continue their edge, keep their edge in aerospace power, right? And that is where India needs to focus, because that is the real Achilles heel. You cannot be an aerospace power without your own aero propulsion ecosystem and your own designs, etc., and your own manufacturing capability, and so on and so forth. So before we go into all that, also the thing about these, because I keep stressing this point, given what you're trying to do with all these unmanned systems and unmanned wingmen, having them powered by turbojets is absolutely not optimal. Okay, a turbojet will remain a turbojet no matter what you do to it. You can modernize the materials used in a turbojet. You can use all the stuff that has gone into fourth generation turbofans and put it in a turbojet, but it still stays a turbojet. It is not going to give you a platform that can achieve side slip easily, right? It will not give you a platform that can really achieve certain angles of attack. The compressor will stall invariably because of inlet distortion. So the thing is that the reason why I'm mentioning all this is because HAL's own Cat's Warrior is currently powered by a bunch of upgraded PTAE7s, which they call the PTAEW, but they will have to move to a turbofan at some point, and I think they will. I think they'll probably adopt the a Manik one derivative only. Now the thing is, we are in a situation where we want planes to do just about everything except solve cancer. Okay, that is where we are at right now, and we want them to solve a range of military problems. We want them to be persistent. We want them to be used on day zero. We want them to be used on day one. We also want them to be something, as Sriram was saying, something that has a lower life cycle cost so that we can use it on day 15 of the conflict as well. Now, again, these are all semi contradictory, if not fully contradictory. If you map these out, you will not really find a continuous set with all these requirements. So that is always going to be a challenge. Having said all this, let us come back to that one question which Indonil did not could not get at that time, which is about the HLFT 42 itself. Okay,
Yeah.
so with that in mind, given that we are trying to get things to solve all kinds of things, HLFT 42 has also been posited by HAL's marketing as a kind of a switchblade and not just your grandfather's trainer. It is in any case a lead-in fighter trainer capable of supersonic speeds, blah blah blah, a bit like the Hurjet actually, right? So tell us, where do you think the program is at? Do you think HAL is capable, HAL's current design teams, in the aircraft division and ARDC, are they capable of delivering a plane which is designed to be unstable? Are they capable of refining the fly-by-wire system for that? And what are the do you see? Yeah, you go and get into it. Do you have any visibility on the timelines for the HLFT 42?
I have. I would keep them to myself. Let it
Okay.
come out from Hal. Um, so HLFT 42, I uh, so they're like you said, advanced trainers come in various shapes and sizes. The very entry level is like a BAE Hawk, which is high subsonic, transonic. Uh, at low speeds, it's very maneuverable. You don't want to fight a Hawk at slow speeds; it will beat you, or an Alpha Jet. Um, and then next in is the LCA trainer T7 Hurjet. They're an LCA trainer, by the way, is the most uh, uh, advanced of all of these aircrafts. But these are 1.6, 1.5 to 1.6 Mach capable aircraft, which are highly maneuverable, as maneuverable as anything else. But of course, their operational cost is almost the same as a fighter aircraft. So then, where should HAL pitch their new trainer? Um, my opinion was go build a F5 trainer equivalent, which is a which is like a 50. So imagine an aircraft which is powered by HTFE afterburning turbofan, which has 25 kilonewton of thrust at dry, maximum military, and then wet thrust of around 45 kilonewtons. There are three such engines in the market. And if you do that, then you have the most, uh, would be the cheapest lift that one could build. But then that would not solve HAL's this MUMT or MUMT program. For the same reasons that we were discussing, they want an aircraft which is lagging behind these loyal wingmans. Now, I talked about the challenges. There are some things that can be done today. If you don't want your wingman to be maneuverable, etc., attritable, you can uh, basically overwhelm the defense of a system by just saying, you get two of my wingmen, my third will go in, right? So and the AI that can be done in those systems is that it's going to select a bunch of jobs that it can do, and out of them prioritize which one to do best and how. And that's the only information that goes back to the mother ship. But even then, a single pilot flying into at the edge of combat, uh, uh, and at the edge of combat is difficult. Okay, so they wanted two pilots. This is where the two pilot for the multi program and the two pilot for the trainer came in, and so they said, okay, let's build an aircraft which is capable of both. Um, and okay, that's great. Now, what was their fastest way to get there? Although many know about the 24, they actually started with the wind tunnel of the 25, which never made saw the light of day. But the wings are the same as the Marut. They what they're doing is they're making leading edge extensions. They're making lurks to the wings, and they are going to use a Russian engine. So this is a great hedge against all American engines. So both these trainers are not going to be on American engines at the moment, as far as I know. It will be more in the J10 class of aircrafts. As far as I know, this will not be an unstable aircraft. So they are going to build an aircraft. The value proposition is that you have an aircraft which has the same cost as an LCA, but not maybe close to as maneuverable, not as maneuverable because it's not using the latest uh, uh, techniques that are out there to increase the agility and maneuverability of the aircraft, but it will be fairly capable aircraft. The second pilot, the WSO, will have the primary job of handling the wingmans, and because this aircraft is They have data up to 1.6 Mach on the wind tunnels. They have finalized or nearly finalized the layout of the configuration of this aircraft. They are about to build the wind tunnel models. Uh, so things are moving well, I would say. Uh, and again, I like the people who are doing it. They know what they're doing. So I'd like to strike off something from Indian minds, for any people's mind. If you, whether you think you can or you cannot, you're right. Okay, uh, for a country with 1/6 of the world's intelligence, it has 1/6 of the world's best intelligence as well. Okay, we are a country which stresses a lot on education. Let's stress a little bit on the doing part. It takes a generation to learn how to do things, and by generations I'm not saying 60 years, it's like 15 years. You need that. Give them that latitude and they will succeed. The HTT-40, IJT, these programs are gold mines because they build these people. And please don't wait for these people to retire. They cannot pass those information on. The next generation has to start building with the guidance of these guys. It's very important. Um, so another great thing that is happening is uh, HAL and New Space. They are incredibly competitive with each other, and this is great. This is great. Um, uh, and finally, I am hearing murmurs that IJT will be extended to an AJT if it gets the 20 kilonewton engine and is 1 ton lighter than BAE Hawk. It's almost there, but with a even more powerful engine, let's say the HTFE 25, um, it'll be a Hawk equivalent. Um, so uh, the I you might see the HLFT 42 and the advanced jet, although they were tied at the hip because of the two pilot requirement, just because what HLFT requires as a mothership for the, it may be too big as a advanced jet trainer lift, and it's only logical to extend IJT to the advanced jet lift design.
I think IJT being upgraded to a Neo AJT is the most likely of the paths right now. Because HLFT 42, even though yeah they may have dropped the, I had a feeling that they would drop the they would not try to build an unstable aircraft at all, because I do not really know how well they what level of capability they have in that domain. Just like that capability in the domain of automatic takeoff and landing is also something that can be discussed here. Of course, the reason why I'm making this point is the ATOL is something that ADE knows, that ADA also knows, both know now. They have demonstrated it not just on the simulator but in actual platforms as well.
Yes,
Let's
yes,
not
that's
get
right.
it. Yeah. So the point is that this is something that HAL should easily borrow from either of those entities, which are all part of the same, ultimately controlled by the same entity called DRDO, right?
Yeah, we're getting
But
back to the turf war
but
issue.
we
Yes.
will, yeah. So I'm going to bring you in, Sriram, because you are an expert on turf wars, and so what are your thoughts on the way things are done over here, and especially the sense you got at the Aero India seminar earlier today itself on this on these lines, basically?
Um, okay. I have a question for you, Indranil, but I'll come back to you after I answer this. So, even in the last episode, I talked about a tweet of mine where there was a meeting between Dr. Kamath and an Air Vice Marshal. I think he was the vice chief of the Air Force. And there was a presentation and a tiny slide on a TV in the background, and it was talking about integration of issues with integration of the saw on the Hawk platform, and how does the total let's, yeah, it's, they were all adults, right? It's how it was a shit show because there were issues with pilots being seconded from the Air Force, AST availability, platform availability, everything, right? Even today, at the seminar, there was a person, he was the chief executive of Semilac, right? Mr. Prasad, doctor, I think, let's not make that mistake. He was saying that one of the reasons why we are seeing protracted development times for a lot of airborne systems, indigenous development programs, is because of lack of availability of the platform for flight tests. And again, it goes deeper. The need for flight tests arises because we do not have the necessary infra to do all up testing even before we go to touch the aircraft. Because we don't have those facilities, we're doing a lot of testing on the aircraft itself. And that is being gated by the platform availability, not just the platform itself, but availability for your testing, because there are multiple competing teams who all want to do flight testing of their own system. And for them, they have to baseline their product development against a standard LCA configuration. You can't have 2 or 3 subsystems getting flight tested at the same time because there are issues, right? So all of these ultimately go and depend on, say, 2 or 3 LSPs. And imagine you have 10 subsystems to be tested, and everybody wants to flight test, fly once in the morning, come back, look at the data, come back and fly in the evening. But then they come back in the evening and find that somebody else wants to do testing. And each time somebody has to test, you have to remove all the other guys' systems, bring it back to baseline, then put your system, remove that. Come tomorrow, both of you are waiting and somebody else has gotten in. Right? So this issue has to be tackled at both ends. One, you should have enough prototypes that so many systems can be tackled. And in future, you have more and more of these systems that have to be tested simultaneously also. Multi-sensor data fusion. I'm sure we've all seen the video of the F-35 from within the cockpit, where you have a single video where data from the radar, the IRST, EOTS, and all of their systems are combined together, and you have a single picture. Right? The F-35 was flying and there was a surface-to-air missile taking off or something. I'm sure it's still there, right? On whichever OEM makes the F-35. So the issue is again about funding, realizing the need for a lot of testing infrastructure. I'm sure if tweeted again, coming back to the same thing, of the EMI, EMC, EW test range that our folks have been asking. I know that they've been asking for 5 years. I don't know how early their initial proposal was sent. Right? This was pre-COVID, 2018-19. I am sure the proposal was sent even before that. And we still don't have it. For those who don't know what I'm talking about, it's where you take an entire A320 AWACS, wheel it into a big hangar, and you have electronics emissions testing being done, right?
In an anechoic chamber. Project an
correct.
image. Yeah, project an image.
Yeah.
So that viewers know.
While you project that image, I'll say the government of the day should be complimented on a few things. While it's true that sanctions are coming slowly, but the number of prototypes that are being built de novo has increased significantly from what used to be a couple of decades back. This is due to better financial situation of the country as a whole. It's also because a lot of private sector companies have come a long way where they can prototype quickly and at good quality as well. For example, now ASTE is actually flying with HAL on IJT. So so things are changing. It's not changing as fast as I would like, but who am I?
No,
Yeah, that's right.
No,
Indranil.
I mean,
I just saw your
kind.
I saw your NRI colors just now. You piped up for the government and the fact that sanctions are coming finally, but they aren't coming fast enough. Just
No,
keeping
he's looking on the
uh,
at the silver
uh,
lining. I'm just
mirth
relaying information
aside.
from those who are suffering on the ground. I'm sure
No,
he's more aware of
look, the case
all
for
of that
the
too.
AMCA and not as a TD, the case for
Yeah,
AMCA FSED was actually sent by ADA to the government by DRDO in financial year 21-22 itself, right? And we know when
oh
the
yeah,
final sanction came. So
yeah.
let us, because this is important because there are people who'll say, "What happened to the AMCA?" So the point is that a thing cannot be prototyped, forget about fly, if it has not even been given financial sanction, right?
Um,
So just
my
with that, yeah. Uh,
yeah, I agree that with larger projects there are too many cooks in our kitchen. That's the truth. uh, there, I would say, there are a lot of well-meaning, forward-leaning officers in the forces and in the ministry, but they are, I mean, they are not in the majority. Things don't move at the rate that they need to move, especially given how fast China is moving. uh, so we are, I'm not kidding, we are 20 years at least behind them. I'm not kidding. uh, RTA program is a joke. uh, if you I have fought with people who are in the know, and I've said most of uh, the aircraft's latest performances comes from good engines. Aerodynamics has been more or less stale for the last 40 or 50 years. It's mostly from the engines that you get use of more composites. So get something that's from, there are quite a few options. Get something that is somebody is ready to sell to you. uh, uh, Work, get your hands dirty, get it flying with a good modern engine. They, at the very least, they could have upgraded the HS748. It's a pain point of mine. Um, how 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 do we throw
We
away?
all have
How do
our
you,
hills that we are willing to die on.
yeah, how do you throw away aircrafts with 50,000 hours? 50 of them. I don't get it.
that is exactly how government spending happens, right? Twice, twice the number, twice the spending. Anyway, Shyam, you projected that anechoic chamber. Now, what are you going to do about it?
Nothing. They've been asking for money. See, Bell is the leading agency on this, right? And so they've gone as far as to identify an airstrip that is unused. And they said because we have to test aerial platforms, and right now we're doing it out in the open. Everybody knows where it is. So we want to keep things under wraps. We don't want to show everybody what we're doing. So I want an airstrip and a facility next to it, a gigantic hangar like this where I can do all my testing of not just one platform, but maybe even more than one, interacting with each other. All of the stuff that I don't have to actually fly and do, right? I can simulate it on the ground. But with a platform as big as an A320, I mean, initially we were thinking of the A330, right? So they wanted something that could accommodate that size. So it's not just that ground vehicles, fighter aircraft, the Mark 1A, which is smaller, the Netra Mark 1A, right? All of these require these kind of testing. Even our ground-based ELINT programs, CW programs, all of them require testing, and they do not want to do all of this out in the open for everybody to see. So, and this requires hundreds of crores again, because you have to refurbish an airstrip, build a facility next to it. And it is not just for DRDO programs. I mean, at least the ones that are being done by the DRDO labs, right? Even private sector can bring in their own uh, products that they're developing to come and get it tested, right? I mean, the government has moved in that direction, saying all testing infrastructure should be open to the private sector for whatever they develop. Yeah, that idea and all is fine, but infrastructure should be set up first, right? And we've cried enough about engines. Maybe not. I don't know.
No,
Again, infra for that was also required. So
airstrip and
this is
sorry,
sorry.
an airstrip and a facility is not just required for to keep the in secret. It's a fundamental requirement. You if you want to test an aircraft, you want to take it up, you want to bring it down, you want to offload the data, you want to process it then and there. You cannot take the aircraft anywhere else. And if it was an UAV, maybe you could package it, but that's only for a small UAV. The other thing is it has to be, if you're doing experimental stuff, it cannot be in highly congested places, right? That's where OMCA is great. It's not about sixth generation. It's not that. They want to build an autopilot, okay? And for autonomous flight, flying out of the Hell airport in Bengaluru, which is, I mean, there's people everywhere, right? So how do you make sure that that aircraft doesn't crash? That's why the pilot is there. Okay, he's the fail-safe. He's not optional pilot. Right. To Saurav's question, should they have just borrowed it from DRDO and adapt? One of the failures, I wouldn't say it's a double-edged sword. The problem is they don't talk to each other. There's tough war, significant. Okay, the advantage, and I'm an eternal optimist, is that it fosters competition. I'll tell you one thing: if there are islands of excellence in the Indian defense, one island of excellence is the Claw team. It's absolutely world class. There's no question about it. Okay, and any country in the world will pay top dollar to get that team. Anything to get that team. Okay, and India has it. HAL is not up to their mark yet. They don't have the experience yet, but they are building one. Can India afford to, especially in the manned aircraft? I would like to say yes. The people tell me all this. Our per capita GDP is too small. We should be doing more socialistic things. Do it. The industrial capacity development is a drop in the pond compared to what you are spending on many schemes. So
another sore point.
yeah.
Well, Shriram, why don't you also talk about?
I'm the pessimist in this group.
No,
right?
why
I'm
don't
the eternal
which is
negativist.
which is why you're going to get another
Both of you are
chance.
too positive for my.
Which is why you're going to get another chance to talk about something that I know you want to talk about. What is your view from the turf war perspective as to why the OMCA testing is happening at HAL's old airport? Now go for it. This is your opportunity to spell it out.
ITR is currently a DRDO facility. That answers your question.
Yeah.
And remember, so the ITR is currently being used for Tapas, Swift, and in the very near future for the UCAF program. Supposedly strategic also. Right, we're not building my dream 4-engine huge UCAV, right? So we're building the smaller 13-ton whatever. So all of them have their own fiefdoms, and they're very reluctant to let go. So imagine somebody who's an equivalently anal retentive.
They've disappeared.
Organization. Sorry, yeah. An equally anal retentive organization who also doesn't want to give up and who do not like each other, this is what we'll end up with. And remember, there is a very important point here in that, like Indranil said, the HAL airport is right bang in the middle of the city today. Earlier it had a huge lake. Now we have Marthahalli and Whitefield beyond. Right? So not the best place to fly experimental aircraft or prototype one, right, of any program. Should ideally have somewhere like Groom Lake, right, where nobody around for miles together.
There is a silent test range, but it's not being used.
Again, same issues, right? So, and even with this, right? This is something that Samir Joshi had also talked about, and even Group Captain Thakur also mentioned it once long back. In that, we um we have civilians around, and B, Bangalore, it's especially, is in a flight corridor. Above a certain altitude, I think it's 25,000 feet, you have to have ATC clearance because you then get into civilian traffic. In
It's much
flying
lower.
experimental, especially unmanned aircraft, to get to fly in those
Yes.
higher altitude classes airspace, you need a lot of certification, okays from a lot of different agencies. And let's face it, you're trying out experimental prototype aircraft for the military. You want freedom and you don't want to tell others, right? So you need specified test ranges. And we're talking about just manned aircraft, right? For unmanned aircraft which have to fly for 500 to 1000 kilometers, you need vast open spaces that they can fly with freedom without having to worry about which civilian airliner is going to fly in.
They,
And this is something that a lot of companies have brought out. It's not just ADA or ADE, right? Even the small Jaren or Shahid type drone makers, including L&T, who have their own Abhyas type, target drone, even they've brought out this issue and complained that they need somewhere that they can test at full range, right? So if you're building something like the Jaren, which has to fly slowly but 1000 kilometers, right now they can only test for 250 kilometers, and then they'll have to. I mean, they are telling us that they're using this 250-kilometer data and extrapolating and saying that ours will, if you extrapolate on the curve, it will fly to 1000 kilometers and reach the target. But they have no way of proving that their system will fly for 1000 kilometers. Without all of this infra, you will not be able to develop products. Testing, no matter how irritating it is for any developer or even a coder, right, is important, is vital to get to certification, and only then your product will get bought.
I'll, I'll,
So,
I'll, I'll touch
yeah,
on this one, Sriram, my views on this. So there are three things over here. You see the ITR facility at, sorry, not the ITR facility, the,
ATR,
yeah,
Chitradurga,
Chitradurga. This
Chitradurga.
is used by all,
aeronautical test range.
yeah, ATR. Yeah, so they are used by all government of India. So ISRO uses it, DRDO uses it, and the likes, right? Then HAL is primarily in Bengaluru because their research is primarily in Bengaluru. But they have other airports all around the country. So if they want to go strategic, they can find other alternatives. The question of their hire, they're a company, so why should they wait for government? They should prioritize money for they have many facilities. They have to add test facilities next to the facility. Then comes the third category of developers and a very vibrant ecosystem, Dynamatics and others. There we need a couple of these capabilities, maybe around corridors, maybe one around Coimbatore, maybe one near Bengaluru, maybe one on the coastal, and maybe one in the UP corridor, defense corridor, where the government sets up, and you don't need a full-fledged airport. You need something with uh, maybe a 1 kilometer runway, and uh, and you build hangars, and these companies rent out these hangars where they can do the testing. Okay, they don't have the capital to build a airport, so that the government should subsidize. But the rest is And I must say, I look at the UAV development today in India, and it's very vibrant, very vibrant. Yeah, I'm pretty sure we will get very good UAVs in a very short time. Um, I just request one thing of decision makers, that don't take anybody at face value, because the government is giving a lot of impetus, a lot of money, and there are a lot of people who want to make easy money. So look underneath the bed sheets. Um, take the covers off. There are lots of very good players, uh, very good players, and incentivize them, and throw the ones, make an example of the ones who are trying to make easy money. Um, I'm you guys said it in the last. Find the doers, and you must incentivize the doers, and you must have a stick for non-doers and non-performers.
So basically, what Indranil is saying is, don't let your drishti get skewed. Okay.
Okay.
Eh,
so
to touch
yeah,
upon
yeah,
what he was talking about, right?
yeah.
About government initiatives. So this was something that the Tamil Nadu government came up with, and told the person on the right in the picture is the one who set up Daksha, right? She was in the news recently. So they are being told to use Ulundurpet is a few couple of 100 kilometers south of Chennai, right? So there's a defunct airstrip there, and they've been asked to do that. And the government is also setting up a drone testing facility near Sri Perumbudur, right? That was in coordination with the defense ministry when they said the industrial defense corridors have to
Yeah.
set up facilities and everything. So the Tamil Nadu government came up with the proposal to set up one for drones. This is in addition to that. Yeah, I just wanted to add.
Yeah, we did. Anyways, yeah, he's back. We are being jammed. So the thing is that, see,
Sorry.
like that facility in Tamil Nadu, another facility will come up in North India also, as Indonil
There was
mentioned.
talk of setting up one in Madhya Pradesh.
Yes, and that is going to be close to because it's going to be close to Jhansi, the UP Defense Industrial Corridor, basically.
Oh yeah.
So there is. See, you need a proper EW come drone testing range. Okay, you can't just have these makeshift arrangements, or even repurpose old HAL fields which are here and there, or even old airports, say something like Chakulia, which was used in the Second World War. You can't do with all that. You need something ab initio, because the real point is, it's not about national resources getting wasted or being distributed amongst too many players or whatever, and suboptimal expense. The real problem is, we are 16 to 20 years behind the Chinese, 16 years behind in fighter development. If you take into account other things, then as Indonil said, 20 years, right? So we have to bridge that gap as soon as possible, because the fact of the matter remains this: deterrence was, violated. Deterrence did not hold in the summer of 2020. You do not want that to happen again. I'm not saying that there will be a conventional war to end all conventional wars, because that will go nuclear very quickly. But you don't want to be in a situation where you are left with a binary, where you either don't respond or you keep escalating till the nuclear level, right? Which is why you need your conventional arsenal anyway. So, and in that, air power will continue to play a role as far as the India China deterrence relationship is concerned. So, given that in mind, we do have a window, still have a window, provided we do a number of other things, which we are doing now, I think. Again, I'm not one to ever pipe up for the establishment, but I think the establishment is doing a few things at least. So those things are there, but the focus has to be on MOUs between entities. See, Indranil talked about ISRO being there at ATR Chitradurga. That's right, but ISRO has an apex level MOU with DRDO. The MOUs that you have between DRDO and HAL at the moment are all related to specific projects. There's an old LCA related MOU. There's a Mark II related MOU, so on and so forth, between ADA and ARDC and all that. You actually, till date, you don't even have a proper MOU between GTRE and AERDC of HAL. HAL's high altitude engine test facility for the HTFE-25 is actually Ladakh, right? The plateau in Ladakh is their HATF, their makeshift HATF for the HTFE-25. They just take it over there to test. Anyway, so with that in mind, we've had a great session today. We'll just take a few questions and then we'll of course have to call it a night over here. And of course, Indonil has a a Saturday to look forward to. So let
Yeah.
us go to some
Hey,
questions now. Yeah,
while you're looking at the questions, one point I'd like to touch,
yeah.
and this was brought about by Saurav Joshi recently, and his point was, I can, uh, attempt to build low-cost attributable platforms, but finding engines for my platforms is a major challenge. Now, today we have programs all the way from quarter kilonewton all the way to whatever HTFE will amount to, right? 25 dry and whatever wet. But none of them is in serial production. They're all at various stages of development, except for maybe the PTI 7, but that's a turbojet, right? We don't have any engine in serial production. We have the Kalyani Center of Technical Intelligence or Technical Excellence, whatever. They're also building these sub kilonewton engines. But everything is just a research program, but nothing is fructified into a working engine that is in production, which equips any aerial vehicle. Even something as simple as taking the Abhyas and putting a small turbofan on it and getting it into a Shahid type, something of that sort with serial production and in numbers would give anybody confidence.
Well, something is being serially produced.
The only engine that will get serial produced will be the Kaveri drive. Whenever that thing gets sanctioned.
Manik 1 STFE is already in limited series production, and that will be serially produced before anything else. There are no issues with it anymore. That has been
technical challenges that needs to be solved still.
No, there are
but
no.
For now, it works. Yeah.
With it anymore. No, there are no technical challenges with it. If you want to drop in a centrifugal compressor instead of the axial radial compressor, then there are technical issues that you need to solve. But with the current scheme, it can be produced serially. In fact, this is something private. Yeah. So the other thing is, of course, the KD that will also be serially produced because already it's into LSP as well. But let us just go to the questions.
Let's do questions. Yeah.
Yeah, I'll give. So you have Dhruv Raman Singh saying options for India. If Pak gets 5th gen jets in the near future, well before AMCA timelines, Russian platforms enough to deter against Chinese J-20s and J-35s. Realistically, F-35 is not being offered. Indonil, what are your views on this?
See, this 5th generation blah 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 is I don't believe in generation of aircrafts, and no serious commentator believes those things. The question is, they have certain capabilities, we have certain capabilities. Along with that, we have our tactics, we have our the geography. So based on these things, how do you fight each other? It has never happened in the case of any airfare that the next generation has overpowered the previous generation. It almost never happens. It is always who has the better tactics. For example, let's go to World War II, okay, where the thousands of aircrafts were built and fought and destructed. It was not so much that the Spitfire or the P-51 was significantly better than the Messerschmitt. The P-51 was built in US where the production line could go on unhindered by the war, where the Allied forces just destructed Germany's capability to build these aircrafts at the rate of attrition. So coming back to 5th generation F-35, how will India fight? India will fight with what they have. 5th generation aircraft is not they are not going to be. I don't think Pakistan has the capability financially to operate 5th generation aircrafts as 5th generation aircrafts. That requires enormous capital. Coming to China, they may have, but geography is on our side on there, and we will fight with what we have. With China, I'll say this: The reason I say they're more than 20 years ahead of us is not just the delay in the prototypes. Their manufacturing capability uh, industry is way ahead of us. They can build hundreds of aircrafts today at very high quality per year. It'll take us some time to get there. Okay, um, that's a fundament. Only two countries in the world can do it right now: US and China. Build fifth generation aircraft at the quality that required, at the quantity that they required. The second thing, the quantity, uh, is is uh, is is a very important thing. And when China can field its own aircraft, we will not be able to borrow or buy aircrafts to to fight with them. We have to close this gap. We have to close this gap. There is no alternative to this. We have passed the buck for many a generation. Um, the Chinese have not, uh, and they have bit the bullet. They have for the last 30, 40 years, and today they compete with the very best, and in some fields they're ahead of the rest of the world. The same is true for our missile development programs. We bit the bullet 30 or 40 years back. And today, our missiles are not just best in class. Some of the missiles that are coming out are true out of the box world beaters. There is no equivalent in the rest of the world in some of these things. So please bite the bullet. Don't go for another Su-57, another. Uh, it's it's just that our generation doesn't have the gumption. क्या होगा? अगर चाइना अटैक कर देगा, पाकिस्तान अटैक कर देगा, what will happen? See, China stood firm with Taiwan, India, Japan all fielding Western aircrafts. What were they fielding? The J-10s couldn't fly straight down the air runway for the first, and their chief developer came and said, "This is our baby. I'm not going to throw it away." The J-10 is the bedrock of modern Chinese aviation. J-10, J-20, J-35, J whatever. That's the bedrock.
Yeah, and one comes after the next. So Sriram, as
Again, it
Indonesia's
comes to vision,
yeah.
right?
No,
It
but
comes to vision.
what are your views on the band-aid method usually employed over here? The band-aid, is there a band-aid at all now, given the
Uh,
circumstances?
like I said, I'm the eternal negativist. So my views are always very tempered, unlike you both optimists. See, the government is unwilling to increase spending, right? So the spending increase that gets hyped every time by the media is not meaningful. And we have a limited capex, as you've mentioned multiple times. A lot of it goes off to service existing procurements. So to begin new ones, we have very limited fiscal space. And okay, let's not compare ourselves to the Chinese, who have a lot more money to throw around. So they can have multiple programs uh, going on, and they can pick and choose based on whatever is capable or whatever they want to, whichever agency they want to favor. But given that we have one-shot programs every time, at least when it comes to manufacturing production, the time taken to decide and ultimately make up a mind and say, okay, fine, we're going to build X amount of these, has to be done quickly. You can't not fund and then come back and say when the prototype is nearing some maturity, and then said, oh, this is going to take so much money. Let me think about it for 3-4 years and then come back and give you orders for 20 units. Remember, if you're building only 20, I will come back to you, I know. If you're building only 20 and there is no certainty in the future that you will build another 200, and you go and tell a vendor, भाई साहब मेरे लिए ये 20 बना के दे दो, he will laugh you out of his workshop and say, Arey, this foreign OEM, and this is a direct quote, right? A foreign OEM, is coming to me with 5 years of orders, right, and is willing to help me stabilize my production.
Yeah.
You come to me and tell me you want only 20 units, and you have no idea as to how many units you will order and when you will order. And this is something even the air chief had said: keep your production line open. I will make up my mind whenever and come and give you orders, but you have to produce and give. Right? This is something that happened with the K9 Vajra production line. L&T had the thing, the production line gathering cobwebs for 3 years before a follow-on order came, and that was an assembly program.
Yeah.
Imagine you have to have local suppliers for every little nut and bolt and fastener for your own program, and you go back to him 2 years later and said, अरे वो 2 साल पहले मैंने order दिया था ना, उसमें 10 और बना के दे दो, and he would have retooled and he would be making fasteners for cycles or something.
Yeah.
Why would he come back and spend money on something that has no visibility? Another thing, something that is unappreciated, is the level of automation that you can bring in, right, on in production when you have long production runs
You have scale.
and at good scale, right? I forgot the word. So when you have scale, you can bring in automation. What does it do? It gives you repeatability and gets you high quality, because ultimately any system, it's the human in the loop who causes issues and who can deliver brilliance also. But when it comes to repeatable programs and having quality, automation brings down costs when you have scale. Right. So if you come and say every 5 years I'll come and give you 20 unit order, apart from your DPSU, nobody else will come and say, I'll set up a production line. We had a brilliant think tank saying set up a production line for 1 squadron each. 1 year later, government will come and pick one of you for serial production.
And now
Things do not work like this. It involves thousands of crores.
Yeah, and now you know why the private sector doesn't invest in India in capacity. And
which is why the Tejas production line, when it was offered to the private sector, nobody came up.
And that is the reason why they are willing to fix 3,000 non-conformances as tier 1 or tier 2 for some foreign OEM, and not fix 300 for a domestic project, right? These are the reasons. So anyway, so the thing is that
Indranil had something to say.
Yeah, Indranil, jump in, but we are going to wrap up now, so quickly.
So Shreyam, you're absolutely right about the private sector. I would say this, that thankfully some CEOs reached out to me for whatever reason, and they have said every time that I did this for my country. Okay. There was no I made losses on it. I did it for my country. Not one CEO after CEO has told me this. Okay. Yeah. So, and so the problem is twofold. One is, we are not a doers country. We are not a builders country. So we as a country have to build that. Okay. So that is a chicken and egg problem, but how do we get over it? There are good minds everywhere. As much as I'm sounding as a government apologist, I'm actually very critical of the government. The other thing is a job for you, Saurav, and sometimes like me, is to educate the vote bank for what's required. The government panders to the vote bank. There is no other thing that it panders to. Okay, there might be some patriots and all that. I hate the word nationalist, but patriots, who are inclined, who have the right intentions. But if it comes to winning votes versus patriotism, the votes will always win, because that's their primary constituency. So it's for us to educate the vote bank of what's the requirement for the country. We are reaching a little bit of an economic, which is expected, unless we can find our way to produce for our country and for other countries. Our economic growth is going to slow down, and we must, as technologists, as people who report on technology, we must take this onus on ourselves. And I appreciate your work a lot on make the people understand what's required. That band-aids are not going to fix it. They have held the wound for the last 20 years, where the enemy was also uh, not technologically there. Today, they can stab you with their spear multiple times, and they have a few spheres, and band-aids are not going to work. And this education of how to build is very important. The government is inclined. Um, I would say the forces are better than before. Um, so be an optimist, Sriram.
Shriram,
Push.
Shriram,
Sometimes I am. When I
Shriram,
hear of scramjet tests,
Shriram's spit has dried hearing that. But anyway, the thing is, see, the point is the value multiplier of manufacturing is very much required. Unless you manufacture things, you will run out of things to service. It's as simple as that. Okay, to put it in the most blasé fashion possible. So we have to build a manufacturing estate, and aerospace and defense is definitely something we need to focus on, because we have the R&D backend for that, right? Because everything has to have R&D and manufacturing co-located. And in the case of the Chinese, they have a humming production line now in Chengdu, which can produce God knows how many J20 units, and it's highly automated, as Sriram was also talking about, you mentioned as well. So that is definitely something we need to understand, that we are now faced with a very different enemy. Earlier, the enemy was Pakistan, which was another band-aid country, even worse than us in many respects. Okay, so and its answer is the same. It's going to import J35 from somewhere, do something else, try to integrate all that, get try to make the J35 and the ANTPS 77 work together somehow in conjunction. These are the kinds of things that it's looking at. Very bad idea. When you have a system of systems, you can't have disparate systems making up the system of systems. That's a surefire way to not do well in the next engagement anyway. But having said that, so we have to also keep a focus on what can be done right now. So right now what we can do, as we've talked about in other programs, is leverage the one area where we do have excellence, which, as Indonil pointed out, is our missile capabilities, right? And leverage that fully for both air defense and for prosecuting targets at strategic ranges, right? And build the mass in precision required over there, right? Anyway, before I start raising my voice even further, let me just thank the people who've contributed to this program. And
yeah, thank you so much.
yeah, Mick Gisal, thank you for your contribution. Then we have what do you call that? We have, oh God, my thing is not scrolling.
Dhruv,
Okay, you have
Raman,
Upili
Upili Sridharan,
Sridharan. Thank you for your contribution as well.
Akshay again, thank
We have
you.
Akshay. Thank you. You're a regular. We look forward to your comments all the time. And so
Yep.
with that, I think we'll have to bring this to a close now, because we've gone on quite late into the night,
I
and
did
for
say 2 hours.
yeah, and for of course for Indonil, deeper into the forenoon, as it were. But the thing is that we had a good session today, in my view. I think we touched upon a lot of issues. I think those who watch this program will also get some clarity about certain important national projects in the aerospace domain. Well, having said all that, a lot more needs to be done. There is no alternative to learning by doing, as Indonil said, as Sriram also said, as I have also said in the past. There is no alternative to learning by doing. There is no alternative to building something of this generation in numbers before you can credibly build something of the next generation. So you have to understand that that is how an industrial ecosystem matures. You can't really have leapfrog industrially. You can leapfrog in terms of your chess capability, maybe even that is a matter of debate, but you cannot really leapfrog in terms of industrial capability. So with that, let us bring this session to a close. I think it was a highly enlightening, illuminating session. I hope you enjoyed it, and as always, Jai Hind.
Jai Hind.